and you're now back with Gen Y. Today we have Brent Stafford, who is a producer and a director for Too Cool Productions. So thank you for being on the show today,
Hello,
Brent.
guys.
Hi, Brent.
Hi.
How's it going?
Pretty good.
Good.
How about yourself?
Good, thank you.
That's good.
And Brent, what is your background in the work of media and violence in the media?
I did my master's degree at SFU over the last couple of years on violence in video games. Well, specifically video games in general, but did a lot of focus on the issue of violence in video games. So had a lot of looking at that.
Okay. So what would you say, in your opinion, are some of the negative issues presented in music today?
Well, you know, it's a pretty big question because there's a lot of music covers a whole gamut of moral issues. But I think that in knowing what we're going to talk about today, some of the really die-hard rap, it's very misogynist, which means, you know, very anti-women, promoting violence against women, extremely racist, very hate-orientated. So, I mean, certainly some very dark cultural themes come out of some of this rap that we're probably
You know,
talk about.
I don't get the big deal of it all, though. I think it's just, you know, tongue-in-cheek. What do you think?
Well, I'm not too sure. You know, some people are going to dismiss it as tongue-in-cheek. I'm not too sure if we can get away with that. How tongue-in-cheek is it talking about slitting a woman's throat and an entire song devoted to a screaming match and killing your mom and that kind of thing. So
It's pretty gross.
I think it's pretty gross. I absolutely do.
Okay, well, today's rap music specifically, I've noticed, it promotes a lot of violence, a lot of sexism, a lot of, you know, it promotes abuse. I mean, what are your views on that kind of music, like specifically rap? I mean, I know a lot.
Well, rap is pretty much the big sort of danger in this whole area. I mean, it's really tough because when you look back at the history of music, there's been 50 years of waves of moral panic, as Martin Laba, the university professor of mine up at SFU, likes to describe it. And he's quite right. There's been a moral panic that's been going on ever since rock and roll has been around. But I think right now, with what we're seeing an explosion of violence in media and in our culture throughout youth culture, and that's really... Well, rap is pretty much the big...
like specifically rap. I mean, I know a lot.
Well, rap is pretty much the big sort of danger in this whole area. I mean, it's really tough because when you look back at the history of music, there's been 50 years of waves of moral panic, as Martin Laba, the university professor of mine up at SFU, likes to describe it. And he's quite right. There's been a moral panic that's been going on ever since rock and roll has been around. But I think right now, with what we're seeing an explosion of violence in media and in our culture throughout youth culture, and that's really coming out in this rap music. And music is a huge business. Music is big, huge business, and the marketing machine that's behind it is enormous. So the ability for a Eminem kind of group to all of a sudden become knocking Britney Spears off of the charts and becoming the top hip-hop album and on the charts, to me, signals some danger in terms of what kind of messages are coming across in his music. So.
Well, why is rap getting hit so hard and not rock music? I know there's negative messages in rock music, so how come rap's taking the big heat about this?
Well, and that's a good question, and let's differentiate a little bit between what we're seeing now in rap and say what was happening in the late 80s with the gangster rap. I mean, I listened to a lot of NWA when I was you know, a teenager, and I certainly turned out well-adjusted despite what my friends might say. But yeah, you know, never been arrested, but no, I haven't. So, but based on that, like the NWA, you know, comes up from the street. Raps come up from the street, and it's had a catharsis effect for a certain, you know, for a certain cultural group in the U.S. But the kind of hate and violence that was preached by the NWA kind of groups was very much against the police, right? You could, when you look at it 10 years later, you can really see sort of the cultural predicament and situations that happened that created that kind of music. But the kind of stuff that Eminem talks about is not violence towards the police. I'm not saying that's correct, but he's talking about...
He's talking about violence towards other people. It's not just within yourself.
Towards women, too. Like, it's so strongly, like, that so strongly comes clear. And so many people sort of dismiss it as tongue-in-cheek and say, well, we have to talk about it and all that kind of stuff. But I'll tell you right now, all the people that are willing to just say, look, we'll just talk about it, certainly wouldn't allow music like that in their home if it was talking about violence against a minority group like, you know, Jews or blacks, even if it was a white group and stuff like that. So we got to really look like, why are we saying that it's all right to have a top top group like Eminem who's preaching violence against women, and that's acceptable.
And knocking off Britney Spears, who is,
she's Little Miss Pop Queen. Now, you were saying yes, rap is a big part of this, but what other groups are producing this kind of music?
Well, I wish I was an expert enough to know that. I mean, certainly heavy metal has always been accused of.
When was heavy metal? That was more
through the 70s, and of course through the 80s. But like I said before, heavy metal. Oh, I may have said this, but when we were talking earlier, is heavy metal. The kind of stuff that it preached was usually generally very anti-religious, very pro-Satan, very pro-self-hurting. A lot of very pro-suicide. Marilyn Manson stuff is very anti-nationalistic, very anti-religion, very pro-suicide. And a lot of those kind of songs, which really caused problems for the moral panic, was that it propagated hate against yourself.
So I guess you believe now that the new rap groups Eminem are worse than they were in the 80s and 70s.
I don't know, that's a dangerous...
different kind of hate, do you think?
It's a different kind of hate, and for me, what I think makes it even more dangerous is that the marketing and promotional machinery that's behind a band like Eminem is even greater than behind other bands in the past, and they're able to shoot right up to the charts, and it becomes ubiquitous through culture, and everybody starts listening to it right away, and so that it does cause concern for me. So.
Okay, well, cutting you off now, we're going to cut to our streeters, and we were getting some opinions on what you thought about violence in the music scene today. So we're going to roll with that, but make sure to call in our second segment with any questions or comments you might have. So roll that streeter set.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here at the famous Slayer Silver City at Guildford, not to review a movie, but to ask concerned teens about their opinions about inappropriate music. Do you feel today's popular music is inappropriate? Why or why not?
Do I feel it's inappropriate? I don't know if it's inappropriate so much, but it does seem to be going a little over the top as to what it used to be. I mean, it's changed a lot in the last 10 years, and I guess it is slowly going that way. A lot of things are going that way, even TV and all that stuff.
Some of it because it swears a lot and it talks about...
I don't think they have any effect on it at all.
Not very effective. No, I don't pay attention to them.
Not effective at all unless your parents are buying them. Kids don't even pay attention to them, or at least I don't.
And we're back. And before I ask Brent of his comments of the streeter set,
I got a few.
I know they're not as positive as they could be, but for all the callers that are going to call in later on in the show, we're going to set up a tally of how many people are for censoring this music or controlling it or not. So now, what are your comments on the streeter set?
Yeah.
Well, I think first off, it's really important for me to get across that I'm not pro-censorship. I certainly don't think that we should be censoring these things from a government, from a state point of view. That doesn't work at all. But certainly I think that as parents, and for the youth that are out there listening to this, they're gonna hate this advice. But I think parents should certainly be sitting down and talking with their kids about the kind of songs and lyrics that they're listening to, and discussing with them. And it's been suggested by psychology professors to sit down with your kids and try to find out a little bit more about why they want to listen to this kind of music. Look for the reasons in your child's life for wanting to listen to such hateful music, and trying to explore those emotions with children and try to figure things out.
Do you think that's the kids, that's how they're raised right now? The kids they're so negative. Everything's negative, negative, negative. Media is negative. All the news you watch, it's all negative. Is that why?
It plays a huge part, Mark. It really does. I mean, our entire culture is very cynical and very pro-violence. And it's funny, I mean, in television and film and even in music, I mean, you can get away with popularizing violence a lot quicker than you can get away with popularizing drug use specifically, or even sexual content.
Well, you see a lot of violence, I mean, in movies today. I mean, you see a lot more now in movies than you would have, 50 years ago or whatnot. I mean, they still give you the same effect, but without showing all the blood and specifically, killing people. But would you say that, there are any specific effects of violence in the music or the media? Would you say that there's any effects on kids?
Well, I mean, that is a huge area of debate among researchers, and it's something, I mean, I've been on this show before talking about violence, was specifically with WWF and South Park and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm constantly having to remind people that you can't make a correlation specifically between listening to this song or watching this movie and this kind of violent effects happen. But you're talking about an aggregate process here with the milieu of the violence in our culture all coming together, creating an overall desensitization effect. When you're talking to kids in the street, they're like, I don't think it's a problem. It doesn't mean anything to me. Well, you're so desensitized to it, you're not even shocked by it. You don't even get outraged.
You
by
hear
listening
war
to
on
it.
TV and everybody's dying, and you don't even think about it.
Exactly.
It's just you've seen so much, it's very much desensitized.
Totally.
So in your opinion, should artists be held responsible for like the impact that their music might have?
Well, it's tough because in that way, you don't want to be applying unnecessary kind of state control or pressure on artists, because there has to be freedom of speech and freedom of artistic license. But I think the people that really are responsible for perpetuating this kind of music are the record labels, and they certainly have a choice.
Kill the record labels.
Well, they have a choice. I mean, there's a lot of reasons too. You can talk about that, but I mean, they have the choice. And the fact of the matter is, it's so darn profitable to sell this kind of music, right? That they just go out and do it. And I think some of the more social responsibilities should come from the business side of it, just like with video games. It should be it should be the developers of the games, the companies that are pushing these games out, to take a good hard look at what it is that they're throwing millions of dollars of publicity behind and their well-tuned marketing machine to be pushing.
And if you look at it, the record label's driving the artists to create these records anyway.
Well, actually, right now I believe we have Lee on the line. Lee, are you there? Hello? Oh.
Hello?
Steve. Lee, Steve, sorry. Hi, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, do you have a question or comment for our guest?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think that what it boils down to is the family life. I remember, I'm a little old school, I'm 22, and I remember when I bought a iced tea tape, and my grandma was in the minivan with my mom, and I put it in, and it was basically no worse than like the new Eminem CD, if anyone's heard that. It was just, I mean, Eminem's lyrics are a little more graphic, but basically the same idea, talking about all the controversial things. And I just think that my mom, she pulled the e-brake and turned around and sent the tape right back to the store and said, why is my son getting this sold to him type thing. And I think that's what it boils down to is, yeah, there's got labels, but if the parents don't observe what their children are listening to, then,
Well, how come youth aren't taking responsibility with what they're listening to?
Pardon me?
How come youth don't take any responsibility with what they're listening to?
How come I don't?
Well, youth in general. I mean, in what you're saying here, caller, is that parents should be taking a little bit more responsibility, but then as soon as a parent does that, a kid hates that and won't listen. So, I mean,
then they need to discipline their kids the right way, right? I mean, it's a certain age where you have to let your children grow and say, okay, you can listen to what you want, do what you want, but I mean, there's certain age limits, right? And I think, like, kids aren't going to go out and kill someone if they don't already have the idea in their mind. I mean, a guy's lyrics is not going to push them over. It's not the reason why they go and kill someone, I think it boils down to parents, and that's what it is. I mean, if you're a 12-year-old, you shouldn't be allowed to go by the new Eminem, and parents should observe that. But I mean, if you're 16, 17, 18, you should be entitled to listen to what you want.
So you're not offended, and sorry, you guys, but you're not offended at all by the messages that are in the music, specifically with Eminem?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think Eminem, I think he's messing with people's minds. Like, does he really say that stuff because he believes it, or is he saying it to mess with people, or is he, what's his whole story?
You have to wonder, though. I mean, he has a pretty sick mind.
Is he going to go out and stab someone, or do you know that? Like, I mean, he has a song called "Kill You," right? And he goes through the whole song, and he's talking about women, and he just uses every word you could imagine and what he's going to do to them. And then at the end, he says, "Ha ha, I'm just kidding. I love you." So does he love them, or does he hate them? Like, is he messing with us? What is he? Is he a nutball? Is he in it for the money? Who knows, right?
Well, I think that's a good point, Steve. But firstly, are you for or against controlling, censorizing music, Steve?
Oh, I think he's gone.
But he brought up some good points there.
Well, no, he certainly does. But I find with everything, kids got to take responsibility with the messages they're putting in there.
But how young can a kid be to take his own responsibility? Like, a young child, 8 or 9, I don't think he can think for himself.
Well, also, I mean, he was talking about, you know, a parent should be controlling, you know, the CDs that their kids are buying, but also certain parents have less control over their kids at different ages. So, I mean, a 12-year-old might be more independent and might be able to buy whatever CD they want, and they could be listening to that at a very young age, and it could be influencing the way they're growing up. And, I mean, if kids are listening to Eminem talking about raping his mother or whatever else, it's pretty gross. Or whatever else these artists are promoting, it's really, really sad that little kids are listening to this, and they're also, like, I think a lot of kids aren't talking to their parents about it. I think it's gross.
Well, this kind of music's is going to be around. There's no doubt. But the problem for me is that the way the whole chart system works and the way the business of popular music works is that we as a culture almost sanction it, that it's all right when we put it up at the top of the Billboard charts. Right, when we got the ranking system and the whole marketing machine, I'm going to hammer this home a little bit because I don't want to lay everything on parents, and I don't want to lay everything on youth in a situation like this. It comes down to the business so much, right? And when you pop it up on the chart like that and support it with all this marketing, you can't blame youth culture to want to then have it because they're being informed about it. They're being, you know, in a way told that it's all right to have it because they can go to the store and just buy it and so forth, right?
Okay, and now we have a caller. Greg, are you there? Hello? Okay, I think we lost our caller.
All right, Greg. And Steve, in his first call, he said something about age restrictions. Do you think that, like music or movies, do you think there should be age restrictions on music too?
You know, in the world of the internet that we live in now, a lot of this discussion is going to be moot because either the government's going to heavily regulate the internet or it's going to stay free and open access as it is right now, and people are going to be able to get a hold of whatever they want, and that's fine. It's just a key thing is taking a look at why people want to listen to this kind of music, and as parents to discuss it with their kids and talk about it. Personally, myself, I would not let Eminem in my house. I mean, I would talk about it with my kid and all that kind of stuff. But in the end, I'm going to say, you can't. Let's bring this into the house. Now, I don't want to get anybody wrong here. I'm not a moralist. I'm certainly not a moralist. I'm going to see Nine Inch Nails tonight, and there's a lot of parents out there that are going to have problems with some of the lyrics in Nine Inch Nails.